Google is finally bringing quick share to iPhones, but maybe not in the way you'd think.
And your Pixel phone may soon scan your chat messages to warn you about scammers.
I'm Mishaal Rahman.
And I'm C. Scott Brown, and this is the Authority Insights podcast where we break down the latest news and leaks surrounding the Android operating system.
So last year, we broke the news that Google may be working on bringing quick share to iOS and macOS. Since then, we've had Google I/O made by Google, and even the most recent Apple event passed by, and there's still no word on when this new feature would launch. But we've dug up new evidence to suggest Google might be bringing quick share to iPhones soon. However, it may not work offline, which would be a big bummer.
Google has also baked some powerful scam detection features into its Messages and Phone app, but that has left out people who don't use the Messages or Phone app. So it looks like they could be working on extending this feature to third-party chat apps, which I'm sure will make a lot of people happy. And in our third story today, we also want to talk about Samsung, which may be building an AI chatbot right into its Health app.
All right, so before we dive into the first story, a quick programming note. Next week, there won't be an episode because both Scott and myself will be traveling. I'll be attending a Xiaomi launch event. And I believe, Scott, you'll be in Hawaii for the Snapdragon Summit, so that's pretty exciting.
Yeah, I wish we had a soundboard so I could play like a little Hawaiian like luau sound or something. But yes, I'll be in Hawaii, so that'll be a blast.
All right, so the first story for today, the quick share story. This is a big one because, quick share. This is the AirDrop for Android. You use an Android phone. Hopefully, you're listening to this podcast. You're already familiar with what quick share is. But if you're not, this is the peer-to-peer file sharing service that is available on all Android devices because it is actually part of Google Play services. It leverages Bluetooth to basically facilitate the pairing between devices, and then it hands off that connection to Wi-Fi Direct. Then you can actually very quickly transfer many different files over like multi-gig like connection speed because it's all local peer-to-peer, fully offline. However, for the longest time, there has not been an equivalent way to share files between Android and iOS devices. You have had to use maybe like Google Drive. You upload your file to Google Drive, and then you share that link with your iPhone friend, or you, share the file via Gmail or Telegram or Facebook Messenger. But there's never been a quick, built-in peer-to-peer file transferring solution between Android phones and iPhones. And a large part of that is because Apple, they have their AirDrop feature, and it works between Apple devices, but they don't make it available on Android devices, so there's no way to actually use AirDrop on Android devices to actually transfer files. But it looks like Google might be working on bringing Quick Share to Apple devices, which would enable you to actually transfer files between, Android phones and iPhones or Mac devices quite seamlessly. Now, Scott, how excited are you for this possibility?
Well, I use QuickShare every day. Like I use it a lot. I take a photo with my phone. I can immediately share it with my laptop. I travel a lot for work. I'll have a receipt that I've saved on my phone. Maybe I took a photo of it or I took a screenshot if it was like a Google Wallet receipt. And just being able to share all this stuff between my laptop and my phone back and forth without having to plug anything in. And it also works offline is amazing. I've done this on airplanes, like in airplane mode. I've just been, sharing things back and forth, which is really awesome. The idea of being able to share things with iPhones, I think is cool, but what's going to inevitably happen is it's going to be similar to the RCS situation, I think, where Google's going to say, okay, Apple, you don't want to play ball. That's fine. We're going to develop a system to work around you, and it's going to be bad. Like it's going to be inconvenient, and it's going to not work well, and it's going to frustrate iPhone users. And then Apple's going to have to step in and be like, well, I guess we're going to have to fix this because now our users are getting pissed off. And I think that it's a brilliant strategy. It worked for RCS, and now Google's like, we'll just continue doing this because it is stupid. Like obviously, Apple wants the iPhone experience to be great. And so it makes sharing from iPhone to iPhone great. It makes perfect sense. Mm-hmm. Apple has to understand that not everyone who associates with someone who uses an iPhone uses an iPhone. So it's like it actively makes owning an iPhone bad by limiting things to only going iPhone to iPhone. Like it
Right.
has to start understanding this.
I,
And so yeah, I think that what Google is doing is being like, we're gonna push you in the right direction. And so yeah, I'm excited for this, not because this implementation is going to be good, because I can almost guarantee it's not going to be, and you're going to explain, I'm sure, what we're thinking it's going to be. And but I am excited for, 2-3 years down the road when Apple's like, we have to fix this because now it's a mess. And then it'll be so easy. Then it'll just be like, hey, hey, iPhone using friend, here's a file. Whoop. It just goes like, and that'll be awesome. So I'm excited for that. This sounds like a mess to me.
so yeah, before I dive into the actual implementation or how we think this quick share solution for iPhones will work, I do kind of want to talk about a bit about why it's taken so long, like why Google has to do such a workaround, and kind of how frustrating it is like they even have to do such a workaround. So like this is not like a difficult technology. I mean, all iPhones, all Android phones, they have Bluetooth, they have Wi-Fi. But the problem is on iOS and macOS, they don't support the standardized Wi-Fi Direct solution that allows two devices to directly connect to each other using the Wi-Fi standard. Instead, Apple has its own proprietary version of Wi-Fi Direct called AWDL, and that is what AirDrop uses to quickly transfer files between Apple devices. Now, because it's proprietary, there's no way for third-party clients to actually leverage that because it's only exclusive to Apple devices. So, like, Google would have to either reverse engineer it, which would be something probably very precarious for them to do as a giant multinational company. It's not something a hobbyist developer could do and maybe get away with for a little bit, but not a company like Google. Or they would have to use what APIs are available, such as the ability to create a Wi Fi hotspot and then share files between two devices using that Wi Fi hotspot. But the disadvantage of using a Wi Fi hotspot approach is that your two devices would need to be on the same wireless network. It wouldn't be like a seamless transition like it is with AirDrop or QuickShare between Android phones as it is right now. So, and the other problem is that, on Android devices, Google has Play services that allows them to easily distribute QuickShare to as many devices as they want. On Apple devices, they don't have that level of control. They would have to either release a standalone QuickShare client on the Google Play Store, or they would have to bundle their QuickShare solution into some existing application, maybe like the Google Search app. So like their distribution would be a real challenge for Google on Apple devices. And if they choose to distribute it as a separate app, how many iPhone users are actually going to go install it? So I think that is the question that has kind of led Google down this road, down to deciding how we think they're going to be implementing QuickShare for iPhone. So our colleagues, Hadley Simmons and Assemble Debug, in an article wrote about, we know how QuickShare for iPhones will work, and there's some bad news. So from what we can tell, Google's working on a Samsung-like approach where basically when you share a file on your Android phone via QuickShare, you'll tap a button, and then you'll tap another button that allow you to initiate a transfer with iPhone devices. And the way this will work is the QuickShare will upload your files to Google servers in the cloud. It'll use end-to-end encryption to do so there's no like chance the files you're uploading will be leaked. And then it'll generate a QR code that your iPhone wielding friends can scan, and then it'll probably load up their browser and they can download the files from that hosting service. So the benefit of this approach is that, well, your iPhone users don't need to install anything. They don't have to install an application. They don't have to open anything. You just open their camera app and scan a QR code. Very, very simple. Almost anyone with an iPhone knows how to do that. The problem is that this requires an active internet connection because you're uploading files to the cloud, and if those files are really big, then it might take a while for those files to be downloaded locally onto the iPhone. So this might particularly pose a problem when you're in an area with poor or spotty internet connection, like a concert venue, or I don't know, like a festival, which is a very common kind of place where people share photos they've taken together. So yeah, I can see this being a frustrating experience for people who were kind of expecting something to work more seamlessly, but they're getting a solution that requires them to download something from a cloud service. So Scott, your rough thoughts on this approach. What do you think of it?
I think this is just the solution that you already discussed with Google Drive. Like, this is literally uploading your file to Google Drive and then sharing it with your iPhone using friends. It's just that there's less steps and it's a little bit more seamless. It's a little bit more like, okay, instead of uploading the file to Drive and then copying a link to, copying a link to that file and then sharing that file somehow, or sharing that link somehow, whether that's through a text message or whatever, you're just taking a few of the steps away. But the core concept is still the same. You're just uploading the file and then the person is downloading the file. So like I said, a few minutes ago, this is not a solution. This is not a replication of AirDrop. It's not even a replication of QuickShare. It's just the oldest method of sharing files gussied up a little bit. And so like I said, I think that what's going to happen is that iPhone users are going to start saying things like, why can't I share this file using AirDrop with my Android friends? Why can't I do that? Similar to the situation where the guy during the chat with Tim Cook said, why can't, I have rich communication services style communication with my mom? And Tim Cook responded by saying, buy your mom an iPhone. And, that attitude is going to, force Apple's hand. They're going to have to capitulate and create something that's going to be better. So, so I think that what Google is doing here, or what we think Google's doing here, is smart. Let's make a thing that supposedly does what we want it to do, but it will do it terribly, and then Apple will have to respond. So, I think...
Do they, though?
I guess they don't
have
to respond. They don't have to respond. We'll hope they respond. They eventually responded to RCS and they've capitulated on a few other things. So it's like, hopefully eventually they will. But yeah, just going back to what I was saying earlier, it just drives me insane. It's like, Apple has to understand
it's just file sharing.
Not everyone, it's just file sharing. Like, this is so basic of a concept. Hiding this behind your walled garden makes no sense,
Yeah.
Like, I mean, I can tell you, there's business people, like some businesses are locked into iPhones and other businesses are locked into Android, like multinational conglomerates, so it's like the ability for these people to make deals and share information quickly and efficiently. This seems like a no-brainer thing that we should be able to do. And, Google is clearly willing. It's like, here's this open-ended protocol, the Wi-Fi direct thing. We can make this work. And Apple's like, nah, we don't want to do that. It's just, to me, it just drives me insane. It's one of the core reasons why Apple just drives me nuts. I'm just like, why do you do it this way? It doesn't make any sense.
It certainly doesn't feel like the kind of feature that you should be competing with other people against. Like, if you're going to compete with something, with something like actually innovative and like mind-boggling, like, like the generative AI on-device features, right? Not something as simple as file sharing. Like, it just feels like it's wrong to use that as the basis of your lock-in. Yeah. Well, what more can we say? There actually is one more thing I did want to say. So this news, that our colleagues discovered that this file transfer between Android and iPhone might be QR code and cloud server based. It might not be the end of things. Google might still be working on a native QuickShare client for iOS and macOS, in which case that would solve the issue of having to upload things to the cloud, having to download it on a spotty internet connection. So, like, I've been tracking for a while Google's work on the Nearby library. The Nearby library, by the way, is the underlying communications library that QuickShare uses. And for a while, they've been working on a lot of features like macOS support to add hotspot support, for example, in the underlying platform, as I mentioned before. And, like, I think it's clear that you wouldn't be working on this stuff if your only intention was to just scan a QR code and download it from a web browser. iOS and macOS can already do that. So I think the fact that they're kind of implementing these Bluetooth and Wi-Fi improvements specifically for iOS and macOS platforms, I do think they're still working on a native QuickShare client for both platforms. But again, the problem will be how will they distribute that to users? And I think maybe like their interim solution is, okay, we're going to have this QR code solution so that iPhone users don't have to install anything. But at the same time, we'll present them with the option to download an app to make future transfers easier, which I think would be a nice balance. You have the simple approach where they don't have the app already, they can just scan the QR code, and then in the future they can discover that, hey, if I want to get files from my Android friends in the future, I can just have this quick share app downloaded to my device. So that'll take care of that problem. All right. And our next story is focused on a security improvement that is coming to the Android interface on Pixel devices. So, Pixel phones have access to a feature called scam detection that's available during phone calls as well as in text messages in the Google Phone app and the Google Messages app, respectively. So, if you enable this feature, but I think it's actually enabled by default, then whenever Google's machine learning algorithms detect that you might be conversing with a scammer, it'll throw a warning saying, hey, you might be talking to a scammer. Please stop doing what you're doing. Don't send any money. Don't send any gift cards. Don't do anything of that sort. But these features, they only work when you're placing phone calls through the Google Dialer app, the Google Phone app, or you're texting someone in the Google Messages app. They don't work if a scammer is trying to reach you through Telegram, through WhatsApp, through Line, through Facebook Messenger, or all these other applications. Well, according to our colleagues Assemble Debug and Hadley Simmons again in a co-authored article, Google might be working on bringing scam detection to third-party chat apps. And the way this might work is that the Android System Intelligence app might be bringing a new scam detection feature that will scan your notifications from chat apps, and it will detect if you might be talking to a scammer in your favorite chat app. So you'll be warned that a message might have suspicious activity. It could be a scam, or it could contain harmful content. You can also tap a button to confirm whether or not you think it's a scam. So in case you're talking to someone, it was falsely flagged as a scam conversation, you can like detect that you can say it's not a scam, so then it won't bother you in the future. So as for what applications will be supported, our preliminary findings suggest that this will work with apps like Signal, WhatsApp, Instagram, Line, Twitter, and Facebook Messenger Lite. So, Scott, I wanted to ask you briefly, what are your thoughts on this feature? Should users be worried about the possibility of Android scanning the contents of notifications from chat apps?
First, I like this feature. I think it's smart. There are a lot of scams. I don't have any data off the top of my head, but I've heard Google say like the number of scams that it protects users from, and it's very high. It's in the millions every month or something like that. It's a lot. And anytime we can save somebody from being scammed, I think is worthwhile. I will say though that when this feature first rolled out to Pixels, I actually tested it with Ryan Haynes, who also works at Android Authority, and we easily scammed it. So I see you've already pulled up the article here, and yeah, we easily scammed the scam detection system. So I told Ryan, I said, "This is what you're going to say," and then he called me and said it, and the scam detection did not pick up on the blatant scam that Haynes was trying to give me. And obviously, this article was written a while ago, and it was right when this first rolled out, so I'm sure it's a lot better now. But I did want to point this out and say that this is not a foolproof situation. This is not something where you can just turn this on and be like, well, I guess I'm never getting scammed ever in my life again. I am totally safe. So I really like the idea of it, but I want to emphasize to anyone listening that do not put all your faith in this. Still do the same things that you would do. Use your better judgment. If something sounds too good to be true, it's probably not true. And if anyone asks you about Steam gift cards, just don't buy a Steam gift card.
Yeah.
The minute Steam gift cards come into play, you're being scammed. So yeah, I think that that's a great idea. But yeah, I do believe that there are probably people concerned about AI scanning their notifications and quote unquote reading those notifications and then saying this seems like a scam to me. I think that there's always a balance between privacy and security, and sometimes you have to sort of give a little to get a little. And I think that for someone who has a higher, I'm trying to figure out how to say this delicately. For someone who is gullible enough that they might be getting scammed on a semi-regular basis, I think that giving up a little bit of their privacy to protect them is probably worthwhile.
Okay,
But a lot
to
of
be
people,
fair, Scams have gotten a lot more sophisticated in recent
They
years.
have, they have, they have. Yes, yes, yes. But I think that what I'm trying to say is that the people who read Android Authority and the people listening to this podcast, they might think to themselves that it's not a worthwhile trade-off because they're probably tapped in enough to how these scams work that they probably wouldn't fall for that scam. But the people who listen to this podcast and the people who read Android Authority are not the target of this particular feature. So I think that that's something that we need to keep in mind. So before people get their pitchforks out and say, no way in hell do I want AI reading my notifications, remember that this is not targeted towards you. This is targeted towards people who probably should give up a tiny bit of their privacy to protect them, because there are people out there that lose thousands, possibly even hundreds of thousands of dollars to pig butchering scams and similar types of things where, like you said, things are just getting much more sophisticated, and they might be getting a phone call from who they think is the, an older woman might be getting a phone call from somebody that sounds just like their grandson. Hearing's not so good. They've got a hearing aid and it sounds just like them. And then they send them $10,000. It's like, it's really dangerous. So I think that this is something that I'm happy about. Even though I know that a lot of people who listening right now probably don't think it's going to be great for them. Hopefully Google gives us a way to opt in and opt out, just like it does currently with this feature. So that's all I can think of as far as making sure that everyone's happy. Just give us a toggle. We can turn it on. We can turn it off.
I did want to highlight this wonderful editorial written by our colleague Rita, who wrote about why she wants scam detection to be built in system wide for like basically everything. And yeah, this highlighted quote is really important to keep in mind. Not everyone has a techie to turn to and double check if something is a scam or not. So, you might be your designated tech person who everyone asks for, hey, is this legit? Is this something I should be aware of? Not everyone is someone they can turn to like that. So there's a lot of people who, even if you don't know anyone in your personal life who might be affected by this, who might need this feature, there are a lot of people who will need this kind of feature. And the other thing is for techies in particular, if you're worried about this feature, from a privacy perspective, Google will very likely use an on-device machine learning model, like some kind of Gemini Nano or something else, to actually scan your notifications. So there shouldn't be any concern with your notification content being uploaded to the cloud and being processed by like Google's AI servers on the cloud. The other thing is that our colleagues, Assemble Debug and Hadley, kind of wrote about this from a Pixel perspective. They wrote that Pixel phones will support scam detection in chat apps. But I'm personally not sure if this is something that's going to be limited to Pixel phones only, because it is worth noting that scam detection in the Google Messages app is not limited to Pixel phones. It's available to all Android devices. But the scam detection in the Google Phone app is limited to just Pixel phones, although it uses Gemini Nano on the Pixel 9 and later, but some kind of other on-device machine learning model on the Pixel 6 through the Pixel 8 series. So who knows whether or not this feature will actually be limited to Pixel phones or whether it'll be available on all Android phones. That's something we'll have to wait and find out. And we'll also have to wait and see if this is actually be effective, because as you find out yourself, it is quite easy to actually scam the scam detection, but that you did test this out almost a year ago. So maybe hopefully things have changed since then.
Yeah, and I also want to point out that I do hope that Google doesn't limit this to just Pixel phones. To me, like we were saying about the Apple, the Quick Share and AirDrop thing, protecting people from scams should not be something that you build your product on. Like, that should be something that's just inherently given to everyone. Like, you shouldn't have to think to yourself, I am extremely gullible towards scams. I've been scammed numerous times. I should buy a Pixel so I can get those. It should just be for
It feels
everyone.
wrong.
It feels wrong. So I really hope that Google doesn't continue to keep this locked to Pixel devices. The fact that right now it is locked to Pixel devices, I'm willing to give a pass to, because it's still developing the technology, still figuring out the best way to implement it. A year ago, when we did that test, I think we were still in Bard times. Like, we weren't even in Gemini. Like, to give you an idea of like how fast things are going. Like, this was a while ago. So, so I think that as we continue to develop this technology, I think that I hope that Google will not just lock it to Pixels. As much as I love Pixels and as much as I am the Pixel guy in a lot of ways, this is something that I hope everybody can enjoy.
Well, speaking of continuing to evolve technology, Samsung is working on an AI powered health coach in their Samsung Health app. Now, I can already hear like the bells ringing in people's minds about the red flags this might bring. Like AI, especially when it comes to answering health and wellness questions, that is a recipe for disaster potentially. But, this is something we'll have to actually give it a shot once it rolls out. So, what exactly is Samsung doing? So, again, our colleague Assemble Debug, this time co-authored with Adamya, wrote about Samsung's upcoming AI-powered assistant in its health app. So, there have been rumors for a while now that Samsung will be launching a health coach in the US version of the Samsung Health app. And in the latest version of the application, we dug up some evidence that this feature will be called a Samsung Health Assistant, and that it's essentially an AI-powered chatbot that will answer questions about your activity, your sleep, your nutrition, stress, and your energy score. For example, you can ask it things like, how many steps do I need to walk today? And then the assistant will give you an exact answer based on your specific health trends. So, there's a lot of things, in my opinion, that a health app can do. I feel like health apps, broad spectrum health apps like the Samsung Health, Fitbit, Google Fit in the past, they do so much. They track so many details that, very few people understand quite exactly what all these details do. So I personally think this is actually a good idea to have some way to quickly ask questions about your specific health metrics. But I wanted to hear your thoughts on this, Scott. Like, do you think this is a good idea to have AI kind of integrated in answering questions about your health?
Yeah, I think this is one of those situations where AI should be welcome. Obviously, once again, privacy and security and all those things, I'm just going to set those aside. Let's just assume that Samsung is doing the right thing here and keeping this all private and secure and whatever. We don't need to argue about that. But the core idea of the feature, I think, is good. And I think that, like you said, health is very complicated. And there are reasons there are reasons why you have to go to school for a real long time to become a doctor. It's very complicated. And so, we can't depend on people like you and me or just random people understanding the complications of something like, how many steps should I get today? Like, that's going to depend on how much sleep did you get last night? What's your diet like? What's your mobility like? Like, all these factors have to come into play. And even if you were presented with all the data, you wouldn't be able to parse through it and figure out an answer for yourself. So having AI sort of examine all of that and give you a response makes a lot of sense. The issue that I think we're going to face with it is that so much changes with health. I remember growing up, I was told numerous times that eggs are bad for you. If you eat too many eggs, it's bad. And then I was told later on in life that eggs are actually really good for you. They give you lots of protein and they help with your cholesterol and blah, blah, blah. And then they went back and they said eggs are bad. It goes back and forth. You could do the same thing with milk. You could do the same thing with even sugar. This was pre my time, but in the 70s and 80s, sugar was like, they were like, sugar's nothing. Like, go ahead, put as much sugar as you want in anything. And it's like, now we look back on that and we're like, wow, it was crazy.
Yeah.
Wow. So I think that the idea that AI is going to have to there's going to have some significant guardrails, because AI is not going to know as much as what a doctor knows, and AI is not going to be as fast to pick up on new developments within science and health as a human doctor would. AI still, today I use Gemini, and AI still told me that the Pixel 10 series hasn't come out yet. So, it takes a while for AI to catch up on things. And so I think that the core idea of asking AI to give you health information is great. I just think that it's going to be something where it's going to take time to really become safe and reliable. We'll see how Samsung does here.
I also think it's kind of dependent on the category of questions that you're asking, the topics you're asking about. Like, I think for fitness stuff, I think it should be pretty okay, like asking it generalized questions about fitness. But when it comes to health and like medical advice, I think that's where it becomes more problematic because,
Mm.
you know, a lot of that stuff has to deal with your personal health habits. It relies on data that the health system might not have access to. Like, if you need to get a diagnosis, for example, this AI chatbot cannot do that because it doesn't have access to actually run tests on you, run labs, or run imaging on you, right? Like, it can't do actual medical advice, but people will probably very likely will be asking it those kind of questions just because they can. This is presented as an AI chatbot that answers all the questions about their health, so people are going to inevitably do that. Although they do have a warning that says, it cannot diagnose and treat your health conditions, and if you ask it about like health problems, like as we did in this example here, like it'll actually tell you that it cannot diagnose problems. Like example, you say I have a headache, it'll say I can't provide medical advice, but I can share some general information. So I think it will be helpful for fitness questions and potentially wellness questions like improving your sleep and things like that. But medical and specifically health related matters, I think will be a different story entirely, especially as we start evolving the kinds of data that we collect from our smartphones, from our watches. Maybe eventually we start getting blood glucose into the mix, like answering questions about how to manage your blood glucose could potentially be dangerous if it gives you wrong information. And then someone has like a hypoglycemia or hyperglycemia, and they end up dying or something like that from not managing the blood sugar enough because they asked an AI chatbot and it gave it wrong information. So I think the AI companies will have to tread very carefully with how they approach these health chatbots, and hopefully Samsung and Google, from what we can see, they're also working on something similar. Hopefully these companies will be able to tread that line very carefully and very well.
Yeah, as far as Google goes, the Pixel Watch 4 and in tandem with the Fitbit app will start having these AI powered suggestions. So the way Google has explained it to us, it'll be something like, you should go for a run today. Like your running streak, you had 3 days of running and then you took 2 days off. You should run today and you should run this route and you should try and keep your pace at this level or whatever, like that, those kinds of suggestions. So the Pixel Watch 4 is going to be available in early October, so we're going to be able to it's going to be relatively soon that we're going to be able to figure this all out. So I'm excited to check all this out and see how it goes.
Looking forward to your review, which will probably maybe go up on the C. Scott Brown channel. Maybe.
Yeah, no, I definitely want to do something for the C. Scott Brown channel. I'm not really a runner though, and a lot of these features are very geared towards running. So if they can transfer to cycling, I'm much more of a cyclist, so I'm hoping that it'll work, for cycling. But Google is they're playing this a little close to the chest for the reasons that we've just discussed. They want to make sure that they do this right. So we've already asked a bunch of questions about like what we can expect, and they were just like, you'll find out. we don't want to talk about it right now. So, but I am excited to do it to see, because yeah, I think that, like I said, I think this is a good idea. It's just going to have to be done very, very delicately to make sure that nothing dangerous happens.
I feel like I'm going to be saying this a lot. Like the idea, I like the idea, but the execution is what might hold it back. The execution has to be good. I feel like every time we talk about some new Google or Samsung or some other feature, that's always the moral of the story. That's always our conclusion.
Well, yeah, but because everyone listening to this podcast have all experienced some sort of bizarre hallucination with an AI system, like something that doesn't make sense, something that's blatantly incorrect. And, you can just easily extrapolate that happening to something like with your health and how dangerous that might be. So yeah, I think that cautious optimism is the only way to approach this AI revolution that we're in.
That we're heading towards, right?
Well, yes.
All right. And that's everything we've got for you this week. You can find links to all the stories mentioned in this episode down in the show notes, and you can find more amazing stories to read over on AndroidAuthority.com.
Thanks for listening to the Authority Insights podcast. We publish every week on YouTube, Spotify, and other podcast platforms. You can follow us everywhere on social media at Android Authority, and you can follow me personally on Instagram, Blue Sky, and my own YouTube channel at C. Scott Brown.
As for me, I'm on most social media platforms posting day in and day out about Android. If you want to keep up with the latest in Android news, go to my link tree and find me on the platform that you like best. Thanks for listening.